much. Thanks for that, Clifford. And I guess before I introduce Chad, I'd like to just reinforce what Clifford was speaking about there, in the fact that what's important in these sessions to remember is from a format perspective, they're pretty much a conversation between, yes, Chad and I, but also what we try to do as much as possible is to include you and incorporate you in that conversation, which means whenever you've got a question at any point, feel free to raise your hand digitally on the Zoom application. And then if you've got a question to pose, Chad we'll try to answer the question as best as we can. Or after we've concluded our conversation, if you'd like to hear more while we speak, you can ask your questions once we're done with the conversation. So yeah, feel free to engage. It is supposed to be an engaging type of conversation, not really one-way traffic from Chad and I. So I guess just to kick us off, I'll quickly go through Chad's bio. It was quite a challenge shortening it because of the amount of things that he's been involved with and is currently involved in. So to start us off, Chad is pretty much a trusted learning technology consultant who successfully executes projects for, or has executed projects for firms like Deloitte, Accenture, Standard Bank, Dimension Data, and NTT. And he's a vendor for technology advisory and consulting with teams across the globe, helping to save learning and development costs for leaders in the regions of the millions. And from a territory perspective, he's dealt with Asia Pacific, the Middle East, Europe, Africa, of course, the Americas, and Australia. He currently manages learning technology ecosystem with LXP, LMS, and content service providers globally for 40,000 employees across 30 companies. He's passionate about driving change and communications to shape a learning culture within organizations. Learning culture, super key, with a strong drive for innovation, focused on lifelong learning in order to build trust with clients quickly. He also supports continuous improvement in the workplace by augmenting learning across the various platforms such as Degreed, Path, Gather, LinkedIn Learning, Pluralsight, Skillsoft, all those learning sites. He has a learn it all sort of mindset and he believes in being perpetually in beta, which means learning, unlearning, and relearning in order to create enabling environments within learning organizations. So ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Chad to our webinar this afternoon, our third webinar. Welcome, Chad.
Thank you so much. That was quite a mouthful. I never read it like that before. I think I need to update it.
And that is actually, to give you a view, Chad, it is the highly summarized version. Highly summarized. I emphasize.
It's crazy.
So maybe he has a challenge for Chad on the spot, like in one sentence. Maybe explain to everyone what it is that you do.
I'm a network collaborator.
Oh, yes.
Sentence.
3 words.
Done.
3 words.
Yeah. Network collaborator.
But Chad, you forgot the hashtag before network collaborator. But we'll get into that. We'll get into that part for everybody's benefit. Around how the hashtag network collaborator started. For now, I'd like for us to start at the beginning.
Absolutely.
In terms of starting at the beginning, I'd like for you to give us an overview of around who you are. So we want to understand where number one, Chad comes from. Number two, what makes Chad tick? What is Chad passionate about? So number one, where do you come from? What did you do? And what are you passionate about to start us off?
I'm from Cape Town. Passionate about a lot of things, but personally, family and helping others. I mean, just to summarize it. And I think that's how I got into what I'm doing now. From a career perspective, As you said, I'm a learning technology specialist, for lack of a better word. I do advisory and consulting globally. And I basically, as we said earlier, network collaborator, help companies, CEOs, startups find solutions to their challenges or help them improve operational efficiencies around the world. Around EdTech or learning technology itself. Personally, Chad is not defined by his work. As you've said, I'm a lifelong learner. I love learning new things, staying humble, learning from people like yourself, people in other industries where we can leverage knowledge and solutions across a diversity of verticals within different business areas. Always striving for that 1% improvement in all aspects of life. At least you're moving the dial with 1%. Learn it all mindset, like you said, not know it all, because once you think you know it all, then already on your going down. Because there's always someone new, there's always someone younger, someone fresh. So always have that learn it all mentality. In terms of what you said, perpetual beta, it's all about being a work in progress. Always starting at zero. And with this conversation being about kids at school and even for individuals around continuous learning, we also have to unlearn, the bad habit. We always hear people saying, we've always done it this way and we'll keep doing it in companies or at schools. Sometimes we have to unlearn those habits or those ways of working, and because there might be a more efficient way of doing things. So unlearning a habit. Passions, like I said, making a positive social impact, helping other people, in various ways. And for me, that has been through EdTech, researching EdTech platforms and solutions and helping companies come up with smarter options for their employees. And learning from yourself, who I've been fortunate enough to have as a mentor around startups, exploring ideation and ideas for new startups, watching market trends, insights. And basically around the social impact, and my passion is about making these platforms firstly accessible. So democratizing access to it, making it affordable, and obviously, as you heard, making it available. Like now the kids are not at school, they can't get access. So it would be nice that they could get a zero-rated website where they could access it. And available. So researching EdTech to make it accessible, affordable, available. That's a passion of mine,
Okay. So, and we're going to touch on that just a bit later. What I want to get into for now is take a couple of steps back. So talk us through a bit in terms of, and I'm asking you to dig into the crates now from a history perspective. So talk us through, number one, what you studied in varsity, if you went to varsity, or what sort of institution did you go to? And number two, after you went, or after you completed your studies, where did you work and what were you doing there? So let's start there.
Studies, I studied IT in Cape Town. It was then Peninsula Technikon, right opposite UWC, but it's now called Cape Peninsula University of Technology.
Oh, CPUT, yes.
Yes. So I studied IT there and received my national diploma in IT with a major in software development, programming. That was successfully completed in 2003. I had a short stint at Old Mutual before I came over to Gauteng. Why? The question is, why did I study IT, or what did I do after I finished?
What did you do after you finished?
I needed a backup for professional football. At the time, I was playing.
You see that right
True
there.
story.
You were caught out. You were caught out because you didn't mention football as passion, and now you're mentioning it all of a sudden.
No.
Yes.
Yeah, look, coming from Mitchell's Plain in Cape Town on the Cape Flats, drugs, gangsterism, seeing friends of yours getting killed, robbed, stabbed. You live in those conditions daily. So football was what kept me safe and alive. But yeah, I studied because it was a backup basically for football if it didn't work out. But more importantly, at that time, 98, digital literacy skills was like a new thing. It was the in thing or the it thing.
Yeah.
Digital literacy skills, and more importantly, programming, because that's when open source literally hit the market. And it was in high demand, and obviously there wasn't enough skills at that time. Everyone was very industrial age still, pen, paper, or physical labor. So I studied IT because digital literacy skills were in demand, and so was programming. And I can say that even today, that investment still benefits me today. Because if you can programming, it teaches you structure, it teaches you critical thinking, problem solving. So it was a backup for football. That's why.
Yeah, I still think you need to chat to Cape Town, Cape Town City FC. They can hook you up with a coaching job there, but that's a story for another day.
Yeah, let's leave that for another day.
So what happened after you studied? I know you've had you had a couple of stints after that, like your Deloitte, your Accenture, Standard Bank.
I came over to Gauteng on a learnership through SETA, State Information Technology Agency, and that was for web development learnership. We finished that, qualified as a web designer developer. We were then onboarded into the company for about 3 months. And then we were given an ultimatum in 2006, just 3 months into the job. And it's like, guys, the management there, the training management came to us and said, guys, we were at a conference. There's something called e-learning. You need to learn it. And in 3 months, come up with a prototype and demo, because we want to create a new business unit. And your job depends on it. So those kind of things that's how I landed. Let's firstly go there. That's how I landed in learning technology. So from being a programmer, web developer, ended up in this learning technology, or the world of e-learning. And we basically researched everything from start to end. This is 2006. E-learning, online learning was fairly new in South Africa, and across the globe, Africa itself. We did that for a stint, and I think for 6 months we did that, and then I got a call from Deloitte, because one of the guys that was on the learnership with me gave me a call, and he said, at Deloitte, but guys don't know. They know how to do instructional design, and they know how to do the basic training. They don't have to do programming. Because at that time, I don't think I'm not sure if you remember, everyone started using India as an outsourced partner.
Yes. Yeah, I remember that.
And one of the classic projects was you had to fill in verbatim what color the sky should be, or what color the text should be. And R1 million project got, what's the right word? It failed dismally. So we were 2 guys who had to fix R1 million project, programming in Flash, an action script. And that's how I got to Deloitte. Deloitte got an appetite for management consulting. Instead of being in the trenches, more really helping operational efficiencies around training. And I was based out at EdCon at the head office, and basically was training how to develop e-learning, instructional design. I was basically the only one from Accenture there building e-learning content. while there, because of my activity on LinkedIn Learning, sharing articles and creating a personal learning network, I got a call from someone at Standard Bank to come and join them in the corporate and investment banking space. Joined, also fun enough, it wasn't really a learning culture. It was more compliance training. Like most of us know, we only go to the platform to learn when there's compliance. So we forced to help them set up a new platform, implement a new learning management system, and implemented service management. So when people used to log a support request, they used to do it by email, and it was a back and forth of 10 emails, and it was a, what's the right word? It was a bugbear for me. I didn't enjoy that. So what I started to do in 2011 was got a tablet, and every time I got a support call, I would go to the person's desk, meet the person, understand how they were accessing the learning. So kind of getting into their thinking of how they're accessing the platform. So that helped me personally when we speak to business and we understand our employees and how they access the platform. But secondly, it also gave them a sense of comfort that someone's actually answering the call 100%. And understands them. So I used to do house-to-house calls inside the buildings, go to people, meeting them. And one, that helped drive adoption of L&D and learning systems. And you know, it prevented every time CEOs or executives hear L&D, it becomes a swear word. But thankfully, through the service management that we introduced and this kind of support we were giving, it slowly turned and we started getting, what's the word, trust currency. So leaders were starting to trust us more, giving more leverage to try new learning things. So yeah, I introduced that at Standard Bank.
Okay, so with regards to what we just spoke about, what 2 or 3 things would you say you enjoyed most about what you did back then, or your job, or the role that you played? What 2 or 3 things would you say you enjoyed the most in terms of what you used to do?
I think it's like I said earlier, I just love helping people. I guess growing up, I didn't have much help. Even when you're on a learnership or on a job, you sit in this big corporate office and you have this fear of asking for help, and they only check in on you once at the end of the day. But even in the startup world, it's the same. So I've always had this passion that when I get the opportunity, you kind of want to send the ladder down and help people at every opportunity. So that's what drives me. And I've got a few mentees that I've seen the success of helping people, even just playing a small part. Those are the highlights for me, helping people and seeing them grow in their careers.
Okay.
That's
cool. And I guess related to that, what were some of the challenges that you faced in the job or the role that you fulfilled? What are the top 2 or 3 challenges that you faced in your role?
I think that's still very prevalent today in big corporates. It's business agility. So the time it takes for business to adapt to new things or wanting to try new things, it's a lot of red tape. So if you want to try something new or implement it, you got to get 5 or 6 signatures. You got to jump through a couple of hoops to get it done. Those were the challenges, trying to really, let me say, digitize the learning from a very classroom-based environment to a more online learning, self-driven learning culture. And we got a lot of pushback, especially from executives who've been there, you know, in banks or in IT industries. They've got a tenure, and once you hit 15, 20 years, it's quite hard to convince them because one of their background, and people are very risk averse, or like I said, they don't like to take risks. So those are the challenges. So Yeah, I think I had to learn a lot of the C-level executive colloquial language, for lack of a better word, understand their business language and understand that they want to know numbers. They are not interested in beautiful and pretty PowerPoint presentations. They want to know the numbers, what it will cost them, and if at the end of the day it's going to bring them any value in terms of revenue. I had to learn that. So yeah, those were the challenges. I still
Okay.
face them today.
Yeah, yeah. They pretty much all about the brass tacks, the bottom line.
Yep.
So now let's transition into where you're at right now. So let's go to the middle. We spoke about where you started from, or where you were. Now let's transition into the middle part of the story, where talk us through when Clifford asked you what it is that you do, or how you describe what you do in one sentence. You spoke about being a network collaborator. So one, let's talk about how that came about. How did the name network collaborator come about? And two, what does that actually mean? So what do you do on a day-to-day basis? What is it that chat does? Yes, I hear you talking about all this e-learning stuff and you love helping people, but what does a network collaborator actually do? What does chat do on a day-to-day basis?
I'm hoping I add value in some small shape or form. So, yeah, to answer your question and Clifford's question, network collaborator was coined by Tabo whilst
Oh
we were
no.
Standard Bank. And Tabo was the innovation team. And
Yeah.
we got to talking, and Tabo then became a mentor for me since then. But it was all around startups and building startups and operational efficiency. So what I do right now, I hustle, for lack of a better word. I try and solve CEO business problems. I find solutions for them. I do research for them, and then come back with insights. Insights being stuff that's not publicly available on the network domain.
Yes.
So that's what I get paid for, and I kind of try and also do some product advisory on certain services across the startup world.
Yes.
So yeah, so since I was retrenched in May this year, I've been forced to go into a passion. As Tab would know, I've always said, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So this retrenchment really helped me, and I am now fully involved in my own advisory and consulting business.
Yeah.
And helping startups in the EdTech space, as well as in the enterprise and supply development space.
Yes.
So currently I'm partnering with 2 digital learning and accreditation companies to grow their market share in South Africa. Next month, I'll be a co-founder of an international company, also offering advisory services. And just yesterday, I got invited to do my second, this is my first webinar to the Africa Digital Leadership webinar series. And I was invited yesterday by another mentor of mine to speak on a Pan-Africa digital transformation opportunities across Africa. And this is done out of Kenya. So that's what I do now. I try and don't say spread the love, but help companies leverage the opportunities that are rising now when everyone can only see an economic downfall, because in these economic downfalls are the greatest opportunities. And it's a case of being ready
100%.
When it turns, an opportunity arises versus getting ready. Because most businesses now are trying to operate as business as usual. But I'm sure everyone on the call who's been at home and working, you've all been on Zoom calls, you're tired, you're fatigued, you've got kids, got to manage school. So it's not business as usual. Those businesses are not going to survive into the next year. Most of the guys who've retrenched, the guys who've stayed behind are going to burn out, I think, around March, April. So it's really about seeing the opportunities now that will be available in the market in the next 3 to 6 months. And that's what I really do and try to research on. And yeah.
100%. So what's key for me, and I suppose my experiences in terms of a lot of the stuff that you've been doing to get to the point where you're at, is that what I've noticed is, for me, what's key and what I've learned from you, Chad, is the fact that what you've done is you've leveraged your unique skill, and that one of the things that Chad didn't mention is the fact that he's very passionate about research. He's constantly reading, and not necessarily just books, but he'll be online on blogs, whatever piece of time he has, he stays reading and reading about a lot of different things, a wide variety of things, whether it's the future of education in South Africa, the future of entrepreneurship, technology, EdTech, e-learning, etc. So what I find unique in what Chad has done is he's found a way to commoditize what he has learned through his passion of obsessively, continuously having this hunger to learn. And in the things that he learns, he's found a way to monetize it. He's found people that are interested in paying for the knowledge and insights that he's got. And I think, or I guess with that, what I want to touch on is the know your numbers, know your story bit. In one of the things that Chad coined is the fact that he's picked up from an entrepreneurship perspective, the whole know your numbers, know your story thing comes into play when one of the things he's realized in his research is the fact that entrepreneurs have great ideas, but they don't actually know their numbers or know their story, meaning they don't actually know what they're offering or want to offer their customers. So I don't know if you'd like to expand a bit on that, Chad.
I didn't get the last parts of it, but can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I was saying I didn't hear the last parts of the conversation.
Well, I was saying your last part around, so the know your numbers, know your story. I don't know if you want to add on further to what I spoke about in terms of the importance or the gap that you've identified in the fact that entrepreneurs South African entrepreneurs particularly, all have great ideas and great concepts, but there's a middle piece missing where they don't actually know their numbers or the value that their businesses bring, or know their story in terms of what actual value their solutions bring to the end customer.
Yeah, 100%. They say the richest place on the earth is the graveyard, because that's where all ideas go to die.
100%.
So yeah, know your numbers, know your story is exactly what you said. A lot of entrepreneurs or people who have ideas, firstly, they don't know how to, like you said, commoditize it, make money off those ideas, or even just executing it to get some traction, to get some research, to build on it, to pivot. And then when it comes to the number stories, I think over the last 3 months, the research I've been getting, the most invested market was EdTech over the last 6 months. And I think it was more than $6 billion.
Wow.
So that's the first thing. And then FinTech was after that. Knowing your numbers is very important today. Essentially, you need to know your value. And as Tabu would always say, men lie and women lie, but the numbers don't lie. So if you want to make informed decisions, know your numbers, and that's from your worth perspective, what you offer as a service. But also when making informed decisions, you got to have enough numbers to make a decision, to guide your thinking. Yeah.
So based on what we've just spoken about, it brings the point around the gig economy and I suppose doing bits or pieces of work or pieces of jobs in order for you to reach, for lack of a better phrase, a desired end state, if there's such a thing, or a particular journey or path. What do you think from a gig economy perspective, or where do you think from a gig economy perspective, the country, South Africa, is headed to? Do you think there will be a prevalence of the gig economy where people are slashers, where Thabo is a consultant slash actor slash singer slash poet? So where do you think we're headed in that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping, I'm not going to make the assumption. So if we've watched enough American movies, we've seen people in those movies work 2 jobs, 3 jobs, and that's a norm for them. In South Africa, we've had more of a UK culture where it's 1 job for life based on the Industrial Revolution. Yeah, and the only thing that COVID has done was speed up the 4th Industrial Revolution within Africa and South Africa specifically, where companies now had to downsize, one, but at the same time become operationally efficient, meaning that you use this lovely word they call agile or be nimble. You can't implement a process and it takes 3 months and you need 5 signatures because you're going to lose the new economy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely going to the gig economy where Chad is now, as you've said, a consultant, an advisor, a coach. And for your own worth and for your own value, you're going to need more than 1 job to survive in the 4th Industrial Revolution. And it's a great way that we've seen, like you said, when you read and you study things and you research, doing more than 1 job really opens up your eyes to opportunities or solutions that you can use from one aspect of your career and use it in another aspect of your career, really help you. So that's what the slash economy or the gig economy is really bringing. The other part of the gig economy that's good is you're not stuck in 1 job for life, you know? You can be a web designer today, next week you're working on a web developer job, or at the same time on 1 project, you're the designer and the developer, and it's 3 or 6 months. And after that, you're doing a blockchain project or you're doing cybersecurity.
Yes, yeah.
The gig economy is definitely going to be held in. The challenge is obviously the laws that we have in South Africa, the HR, red tape that's there. So it's not that simple because at Dimension Data, we tried, I think March, April, May, to implement a kind of a internal, what's the right word? So utilizing internal resources for open projects instead of hiring external contractors every time.
Okay.
Basically advertise internally, look, there's a post, we see you've got the skills.
Okay.
Are you interested?
Yeah.
So 1, it gives you as the employee the opportunity to grow in your career. You get to network in your career.
Yes.
And 3, it saves the organization on a whole a cost that you'd have paid to a research, a resourcing house, you know, or a recruiter. So it was kind of a win-win situation, trying the whole gig economy slashy title kind of roles within companies. But it's coming in South Africa slowly. We're seeing the big corporates trying it now. The IT companies are doing it quite swiftly, so it works for them in the DevOps space. But I think it will be a while before South Africa really takes to it. We still see slashes as contractual work, for lack of versus a gig opportunity, you know.
I get what you're saying.
It's coming, but it's going to take a while. There's just too much red tape in South Africa.
I get what you're saying. So one of the things that you mentioned earlier on, and about leveraging your skills and your insights as well as passions, is that I've always drawn a parallel when it comes to you to an influencer, and I'll tell you why. So when you look at social media influencers, what they do is they leverage social networks in order for them to draw value or create value. So when you think about Instagram as a platform, you'll get influencers that will use certain products and then post it onto their Instagram pages. And similar with YouTube, where you find a multitude of podcasts right now, where people have podcasts and they end up finding sponsors. So for me, not necessarily the equivalent, but what would be a parallel when it comes to you to a social media site is I'd like for you to, I guess, touch a little bit on how you currently use LinkedIn in order for you to further yourself in your advances in what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've tried a number of platforms. So Twitter and LinkedIn is my go-to in terms of corporate space. And there's a lot of noise on LinkedIn these days. When I joined, it wasn't as bad. But I leverage LinkedIn, and I say leverage because you wouldn't otherwise meet these people around the world. So you leverage LinkedIn to find experts or thought leaders around the world in your world of work, basically. And you get to follow them, you get to read their articles, and it provides you with a different point of view, firstly, from yours. It challenges you. And it also gives you insights you never thought of before, obviously because it's regional. So it could be coming out of Americas or Asia, Australia. So that's what I really leverage LinkedIn for, is to build my personal learning network. I call it a learning network because I learn from these thought leaders and I follow them. As you said, I read their blogs, webcasts, the webinars. Now you've got your Apple Tunes and your Spotify.
Yes.
Follow their series. Yeah, so through that, I've been able to improve my social currency and my net worth by knowing these individuals and getting to know them. Not only by reading, because having the knowledge is one thing, but you kind of have to process it and get your thoughts out. So I kind of comment on these posts either to find out whether my thoughts is nonsense or it makes no sense, but also to challenge myself, to put myself out there, and yeah, just to build, like I said, more trust currency globally and not just locally, because locally the vendors in South Africa in general, we're not as aggressive on these social media channels, not on Twitter, not on Instagram, not on LinkedIn. There's a few that do it great, but we don't market aggressively in terms of using the platforms, leveraging it to really, one, grow our brands and also to learn from it and build a network for yourself that you can then leverage from, or you can actually offer or add value to that same network. You're not just getting, you're also giving back, which is very important.
Okay, cool. So what you just mentioned there reminded me of a Bruce Lee quote where he speaks about the fact that knowing is not enough. We must apply. And that's super important, the application and the knowledge that you attain over time. So that is true.
So as you said, it's like having an idea. All of us on this call probably have ideas for great businesses, but it's in the execution.
Yes.
So they say execution, you'll have a job for a lifetime. Those people who execute on ideas will have a job for a lifetime. And that's true. I've seen it.
Cool. Now, I suppose my last question for you, Chad, is just as we're getting ready for questions that people on the webinar might have. My last question for you is, what advice would you give to someone that would like to or is on a similar path that you're currently on? And let me describe that path for a second here. So the path that I'm speaking about is where you've left corporate, number one, and number two, you have learned to leverage your skills, knowledge, and passions in order for you to create a sustainable living for yourself. So you're creating value for yourself and your family. So what sort of advice would you give to somebody that is looking to take this path on as well?
Run for the hills. Run as fast as you can. You back yourself. Never let anyone tell you you're not good enough. Use that as motivation when they tell you you can't. Surround yourself with really strong and positive people who've been successful in life. And that could be a gogo that has raised all her grandkids in one house with a small salary. That's someone who's been successful. She's managed to educate, feed them, give them a good life. Someone who's been successful in corporate, someone who's had startups. Even if they failed 5 times, they've learned something in the process. So really, they say you're the average sum of the 5 people you spend your time with. So, and why it's important when I say that, surround yourself with positive people, is that times are going to get tough. Ask me, ask Tabo. I'm always constantly messaging him. You need people around you to build you up. There's enough negativity in the world, on the news, on the TV, around us, at the shops. We see it every day. So you're going to need people who will uplift you, support you, guide you at every step of the way, because it's going to get tough. It's never easy doing the right thing. So yeah, surround yourself with positive people, back yourself, and I think keep learning, just always keep learning. Even if you don't need the skill now, learn to have enough knowledge to have a decent conversation. And that might just open doors. You might need to know that one subject for that one day. And in that one day or in that 1 hour, you might have just generated a new opportunity for yourself. We don't know. So that's why I say just keep learning, remain humble, keep learning. And there's no mistakes. We just learn from the next challenge. I mean, that's the thing, is to reflect when things don't work, unpack it. And then learn from it.
Tabo, can I just interject quickly, because I've got to get back on the road. I've sort of been dipping in and out of the conversation because I'm here in another meeting. But before I check out, I just wanted to leave maybe you and Chad with a thought, and people who are on the call, because we always keep coming back to this theme that somehow schooling feels irrelevant given what's going on in the world around us, the rate and pace of change that's happening outside of our schooling environment. It's just like it's 2 different planets and 2 different universes. But our kids and our learners are required to be at school, and our teachers are required to be at school. So the question is, and we have to complete the curriculum. But while doing that, because call it compliance, we have to go through that, and that's what we're having to do. The issue is, how can we better spend our time as school learners and teachers while we're together in school, to be more attuned to the current thinking, the current trends, and to be better prepared to respond to this world in flux. I think you've used that term before. What did you call them? Where people flip between different jobs, flippers, or whatever you called it, that people are going to wear flashes. People are going to wear, so many hats. And so my question is, given that we're a school-focused conversation, to the educators and to the learners, is how best to spend your time while at school to be better prepared when you finished school. So I'm going to leave you with that to discuss. I'm going to get back on the road, so I'm going to lose my network. But I'll catch up with you guys afterwards. And Chad, I'd love to have an offline conversation with you, but Tabo will give me your details. Just to thank you very much for your time.
Thanks.
And
your pleasure.
I found the session really, really interesting. And well done to you guys. We'll meet
Perfect.
again.
All right.
Okay.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Should we tackle that one?
Go ahead.
I don't think there's a silver bullet for this one. We know the history of our education.
Yeah.
So to answer the how do we best spend our time in the classroom? I think that's through experiential learning. Experiential learning is basically, let's do activities, because there's something called the flipped classroom. So before you come to school tomorrow, you go through your notes, you do your research, and when we come to the classroom, all we do is we do practicals. We practice what we've read up, we practice the theory. So now we apply what we know into the real world. And that's where we see what the difference between theory and practical. And basically you're learning a lifelong skill now, because you're applying problem solving, you're applying critical thinking, you have to make decisions. So decision making, still today in corporate, decision making is a big skill. So that's what I would say is teachers and students today should use the classroom to do experiential learning. Let's do the practical stuff. Do the reading at home, do the theory at home. What you don't understand, you write it down, and that's what you come to the class with. My knowledge or understanding of this is ABC, and teach, clarify or affirm. Or if it's programming at the high schools, try it, read in the classroom, do your project, do a small program. And that's how you learn critical thinking. That's how you learn decision making. And it will get the kids into a let's do it mindset versus I'm just reading and regurgitating. So I'm just memorizing for the test or for the class and I don't touch it again. Whereas the practical, I'm learning a skill for a lifetime. I'll remember it more because I'm doing it more and I'm practically implementing what I understand. So if my understanding is wrong, obviously I'm not going to get it right, but then I get to learn the right way because I've applied it practically and now it makes sense for me in that.
100%. 100%. I hear what you're saying. So I guess as you were speaking throughout some of the questions that I've been asking you, the big thing, and even now as Clifford was asking that question, for me what's coming out quite strongly is Alvin Toffler, who was a futurist, has this famous quote where he speaks about the fact that the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those that cannot read or write, but rather the illiterate of the 21st century will be people that cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So where I'm going with this is pretty much agreeing with what you're saying, Chad, in the fact that a lot of what I've found in terms of a lot of learners and students, and I guess our schooling system, is because of how it's structured, it becomes a CPF method where the aim is just to cram, pass, and forget. As long as you've passed that bit, it doesn't really matter going forward. And the issue with that is, what happens is you don't know the practical application of what it is that you're doing. I mean, this spans across the board. It's not just in high schools. It's also within our tertiary institutions, where when you look at stuff like, which is one of the things that I somewhat appreciate with business schools when they provide the action learning programs, where basically you're taken through a module, and in this module you learn about, for argument's sake, decision making. So what would happen is the assignment or the practical bit would be where you're given a particular scenario, and you as a team or as an individual would be asked how you would go about resolving this particular problem. So what that does is, number one, you have learned about the theory around decision making. And number two, you are given a particular problem on what sort of decision you need to make, and you understand how you would, and the answer doesn't have to be right when you're making these decisions. The important thing is the fact that you are learning how to go about making decisions. So where we need to go to from a teacher's and a learner's perspective, I suppose, to Chad's point, is the experiential learning. It's all about, great, now that I've got all this knowledge, how do I go about applying it? And what does applying it actually mean? And I guess to break it down even further, or to simplify it further, one of the sports that I'm super passionate about is I do Taekwondo, which is a martial arts. And one of the things that I learned in Taekwondo is, you learn what they call forms or katas. So the thing with the katas is that it teaches you to memorize things. So you need to learn them move for move. Yeah? But that's not the important part. The important bit is when you are in a fight, in the ring, of course, you're not going to be going around starting fights on the street. When you're in the ring, what Taekwondo teaches you is that you need to be fluid in the way in which you respond to the katas that you learned. Meaning, you got the theory around what a kata is and how you kick, how you punch, etc., etc. At the end of the day, it's all about implementing it out there. So when you're one-on-one with an opponent, there are certain decisions that you need to make on the fly based on the knowledge that you got during training. So that rings true with life as well, never mind schooling. It's all about the fluidity of making certain decisions, but you won't understand how to make decisions or what a decision is unless you were exposed to it in a learning environment. And hopefully that analogy didn't go too deep where it became too complex. But in essence, those are my views on experiential learning and what can be done in the classroom from a learning perspective between teachers and learners.
I think if you want to bring it home, we think of financial literacy, what they're teaching at schools now. You and I never had that subject.
Yes.
So after high school, we didn't know how to manage money. We didn't know what savings was. We didn't know what an investment was.
Correct,
now,
yeah.
Investment for 30 Rand on the internet or 100 Rand, and already own a share of a company. And that's phenomenal. That's like mind shift.
100%. 100%.
We were taught how to budget. So financial literacy is probably going to be one of the most critical opportunities now that the schools have to teach our kids and the future, these kids' futures on how to budget, how to manage money, how to save, how to invest. It's such a simple topic, but it's something that will save your life and that of your families. We think of footballers in South Africa who retire. 6 months or a year after they retire, they broke. You see them playing on YouTube. Why? They were getting 75,000 a month, 150,000 a month. But yet after 6 months, they broke. And you ask, where was the money? And it goes down to financial literacy, understanding money and how to work with money. And that's, like you said, that's where you can use experiential learning as a great starting point across all schools, at no cost.
Cool. Thanks so much for that, Mr. Thomas.